Guys, Sue's from Smarting Coaching with another little video for you. Hope that you're doing well and that your 2025 has been everything that you want it to be so far. And if it hasn't, maybe it's time to just quickly stop, have a little bit of a rethink and pivot to something that may work better for you. What I wanted to talk about was that I got a bit of a channel through, and it's come in bits and pieces over the last few days, that discusses 2025 as being almost a repeat cycle of 2020 for us to choose again, choose better, choose different, or in fact choose the same and repeat the results that we then got for the next 5 years. The 2020s have been quite disruptive and chaotic. I've seen a lot of people's internal worlds fall apart whilst also watching the external worlds fall apart of people and the world in general having a big, massive shaking, right? There are a lot of reasons for that and there are a lot of things that are happening, but the repeating thing seems to be, a cycle that happens in our lives. We quite often repeat patterns and we can repeat them several times before we realize, hey, this is a pattern. Oh my gosh, this is happening again. Whether it be relationships where it's the same person in a different body, whether it's the same problems at each job that you go to is the same problem in a different setting. And you have to start sitting down and working out what is the common denominator here. The biggest and hardest thing to admit is that you are in fact the common denominator in those situations. It's hard to admit because we go through life where we want to, our default setting is not to take blame for anything, not to take ownership of anything, not to admit fault in anything at the first instance, right? But that is actually leading us astray, and it's the reason why we're stuck in lots of cycles. So if you are finding yourself repeating in any of these things that I've said, and I speak from experience because these are things that I've experienced through my life, and then you realize, right, the common denominator is me. Once you do that, you can take ownership of the problem. You can take ownership of the cycle repeating, and you can take ownership of what you do next. If you want to not admit fault, not admit it's you, want it to be everything else around you, you are then giving the outcome and the whole cycle, the power to somebody else, to something else. You are just a passenger, not even a passenger in the passenger seat. You're in the gosh darn boot in the back of the car where you can't see and you can't hear, and you're just having to go along for the ride, right? You don't have a seatbelt on. You don't have the windshield to show you what's coming next. You're just in the boot and you're just at the mercy of whoever is driving. And sometimes that can feel like a 2-year-old toddler is driving the steering wheel and maybe a 5-year-old is pushing the pedals, right? It doesn't go well. Once you can actually take responsibility, admit fault, or admit or get into the car and get into the steering wheel, then you can actually judge and choose what you do next. But there's a caveat to that though, because sometimes we don't want to be in the driver's seat because then we can blame the driver for where we end up. We don't have to take personal responsibility. We can take that thing that everybody else was telling us to, even though we know that's not what we're supposed to do. And when it goes to shit, we don't blame ourselves. We can blame somebody else. I think it's time that we sat back and took the blame part to ourselves, because once we take the blame, once we take the ownership, once we can see from the driver's seat, you think differently, you choose differently, and you make different paths become available in your life for which you can choose and travel down. So getting back to this repeating thing of 2020 again, I've talked to lots of people who in 2023 and 2024 went through some of the regrets they had of how they handled stuff, of the choices they made, of the things that the snap decisions that they did because somebody else needed this or they wanted that, or they felt like they couldn't do this because they would lose that, or they didn't, whatever. You can just put anything there. Just if you've got to pause the video and think, how have you had these conversations? And one of the biggest things that I found is that people with kids who stayed at home, a lot of those people said how much better the kids were because they weren't running to things after school, they weren't going to school, they weren't this, they weren't that. Things were much calmer, things were much better, their kids were different. When this all settles out, they would say to me, I'm going to take the lesson from that, and I'm not going to put them into 700 things after school, and I'm not going to put the expectations on, and we're not going to spend our free time in the car, and I'm not going to commit all the money to all the things I've been committing, because really that was just causing stress, you know, when they'd be happy with trips to the beach or staying at home, being able to just play and, I don't know, do all the things that kids used to do before they were packed off everywhere. And I watched 9 out of 10, no, I would say 99 out of 100 of those people, once everything opened back up again, go headfirst straight back into the packed schedule, doing the things. And they didn't even do it like, let's get back to what we had before. They then felt the need to make up for the time that they had missed in that 18 months when everything was shut down and everything was whatever. And they actually overcommitted to try and make up for the time that they'd missed in that bracket. Does that make sense? I've watched many people do this. And I actually had a lady say to me the other day, oh my gosh, like things are crazy. I wish we could just have another snap shutdown for a week so I could stay home and sort myself out. And that spoke volumes to me. You can at any time choose that option, right? You can call time on the things that are keeping you on the hamster wheel. Because when you're on the hamster wheel and in the things, even though you feel like you want to leave those things or choose different, you're so in the function of the hamster wheel that there is no opportunity for you to even consider what that different thing would be, or consider the different things that you could be. There's no time or space on the hamster wheel to do anything different. You have to get off that hamster wheel completely. And the way to do that is to take ownership and get in the driver's seat. Now, I want to encourage you to take some time off that hamster wheel. Take some time over the next weeks or couple of months and revisit the last 5 years of your life and work out where you gained skills, where you saw things differently, where you saw a different option, a different plan, where you saw a pivot, where you saw things differently. And then I want you to think about the skills that you gained within that experience of the last 5 years. What skills have you now got in your toolbox that perhaps you didn't have before? You know, and those are wide and varied. Sometimes it's the ability to stay in your lane while everything around you is going to shit. Sometimes it's the ability to shut out the noise and listen to you and hone in on what you're doing and avoid the distractions, because the distractions are out there, and in chaotic times, the distractions are everything, everywhere, all the time. And we can live such a distracted life that if we do pull the distractions out, we feel empty, because that was the majority of our life and our mind was like in this chaoticness, right? I watched a couple of businesses during the first part of the 2020s that were able to pivot and move with the times when they couldn't have people physically in their stores. I also watched businesses close at a rate of knots, and you would have seen that too. But I talked to some of the people who kept it going, and I asked questions of them, because I'm a big question asker. I want to know why 7 out of 10 people can fall here, but the other 3 get up. I want to talk to the 3 that got up, and I want to know what's different with them. What is it with them? All of these people had different things in their mind about what they wanted to do with their business, and they'd thought it through in a smaller scale, but they hadn't done it because, I don't know, perhaps they were worried it wouldn't work. Perhaps, you know, one lady who wanted to do online courses, but she was so fully chocked up with in-person courses, she couldn't do the online ones. And when everything shut down, her online businesses went crazy, and she was like, she had the skeleton of it there ready to go. She just had to make the physical things to put it in, and away it went. And her business that was normally 99% in person became 99% online. And with that little pivot that she had, to be able to allow herself the space and time to cultivate the skeleton ideas that she had, it was quick for her. Another food business had all these things in mind that he wanted to do. He again had the skeleton of the idea, but he didn't really know how to put it in place. And once everything shut down, he didn't have people physically coming into his business anymore. That gave him the space to be able to try out some of these things. And he said to me, some of these things just didn't work, but some of these things worked so well that it even made him consider, when everything did open up again, did he want to go back to the old model, or did he want to stick with this thing that now was working and better and new and different, and expand into those areas? So we can learn different things about ourselves in the chaos. And chaos is just a thing right now. And I feel like it's going to be. The 2020s are that shaking. They are that. Have you ever had towels in the washing machine and they wash and then they drain, and then when the spin cycle comes, it bangs and clangs and clangs and bangs because all the towels have moved over to the one side, and you've actually got to go and stop the machine, lift the lid and reposition the towels, and then put the lid back down again and push on the button to then allow them to spin because they were uneven and unbalanced. The 2020s feels like that spin cycle for the towels, right? And everything is banging and clanging, and we have to recenter now the towels in the washing machine, which would be our thoughts, our beliefs, our plans for the future, our visions for what we thought our life was. We have to now lift the lid, reposition the towels in order for them to be able to spin equally. So it's us, that's a metaphor for us gathering our equilibrium again. And we can do it because there are people out there who are thriving in the chaos, right? They are able to pivot. They are able to reposition themselves. They are able to stop and step back. And I believe it's because they maybe have done a little bit more work on themselves to be sure of themselves, and they've probably stepped out in things before against the current, against what everyone's told them to. They've probably had their fair share of things go belly up, but they've also had the guts to try. And so I think they aren't as scared. It's not the first time for them, right? So they are probably more adventurous in the chaos. The chaos is probably not even a factor to them. They don't see it as chaos. They see it as that chance to reposition the towels in the washing machine. I hope that this is making sense because it's big. And this is the difference between you repeating the last 5 years over the next 5 years, or you using the last 5 years as food and knowledge, and perhaps now I'm seeing a garden and I'm seeing a worm farm. And I'm seeing a compost bin. Right, we have to put the scraps of the last 5 years in the worm farm, in the compost bin, and allow them time to break down. It will leave the stuff that's unusable in the compost bin, but it will give us at the bottom the soil, that the richness of things that we can put into our soil then to help to nurture and feed what we are growing for the next 5 years. Does that make sense? We always learn in situations, but we don't learn if we don't take ownership of us, of our part, of how maybe our attitudes and beliefs and stuff up until now may have served us really well, but are not going to serve us moving forward in the same way that they did. They may need something adding to them. They may need totally scrapping and throwing away. They may need putting in the compost bin and allowing them the time to be able to be worked through so that the good stuff, the stuff that's able to nurture us, comes out. I've learnt so much over the last 5 years. It's not funny. And I could talk about it a lot. And in closed groups, I probably will, but I don't believe that it's for this medium out here right now. But most of it coming back to me, listening to that first thought that comes to me. It came back to my ability to have my relationship with George, which is what I now call God. My relationship with George, of being able to have that ongoing talk with him, to be able to, he is like the worm farm for me, that I give all the scraps to. And then as we have our, group talk, as we have our messenger messages that go on and on and on and on, as we talk daily, hourly, sometimes every 15 minutes, sometimes every minute, as we work through the things together, I'm able to see how I need to pivot, what I can take from the situation that is good, what is useless to carry from that situation, which is often the shame, the guilt, I wonder if I had have done it differently, what would have happened? All of those things. So that clutter now isn't in my mind. So my mind is freer and able to think about the future, think about the different paths the future might hold, and not see that as scary, not repeat things as much. It's a work in progress, but hopefully you understand what I mean. When you can work through with somebody that is safe, with somebody that you know, with somebody that you trust, and work through all of the things that have happened to you and mine for the gold, look for the tools, look for the things that you can take forward with you, then that is where life changes and becomes enriched and becomes like an ever-growing garden, a self-seeding garden, that once you put in the effort and the work, you just need to do the weeds every now and then, and you just need to make sure that you water it, but essentially the seeds are there, right? And different seeds grow at different rates, different seeds provide different things. You know, I've got a beautiful flower garden out in the back garden of mine that provides joy for me, that I go and sit outside and have my coffee and look at the flowers, and I watch the butterflies and I watch the bees and I watch the insects and I watch all of those sorts of things. The joy that it gives me is more than anything that I could ever want. So it doesn't physically give me anything tangibly to like eat or to whatever, but it fills my cup with joy. And now that I've done all the work of planting everything, it's all self-seeding, it just cycles and goes, you know, and I just have to tend the weeds and make sure that it's watered, and it's there for me, joyful. Life can be like that, but you have to do the work to set it up. You have to do the work to, you know, you have to work with the seasons. You know, it's no good me planting something in winter when it's pouring with rain that needs to be in summer to be able to get the heat to germinate, right? Once again, there are plants that do thrive in winter, right? So it's a matter of knowing your garden, right? And knowing what it needs. And again, taking the time to put all of the stuff into the worm farm, into the compost bin, and allowing it the time, which time is something that you really need with lots of things in life. You know, nothing is as instant as we think it is. You know, some things, time is all that is required for it. And that time might be 6 months, 12 months, a year. Might be 40 years, right? Can't rush the time something needs. So don't forget to put your bits and pieces in your metaphorical compost bin and allow them time to break down, and allow them time for the scraps to stay in the top and the good stuff that's going to nurture the next part of your life to come through. And then don't forget to go and get that periodically and sprinkle that on your garden, right? Because things happen in stages. And so we need to nurture them and give them constant nurturing, right? You don't just water a plant once and it's good to go, right? So in all of that, with the next 5 years to come, you have everything in your toolbox that you need to be able to not only get through the next 5 years, but thrive and grow in the next 5 years. But it's going to require you to get back into you, taking ownership of your life. You might upset a few people with the decisions that you make. You know, there might be some friendships that don't make it through. They might go into that little compost bin and they may not come out the other side. There may be jobs that you need to really consider. Is this really where I want to be? Is it taking so much out of me that all I'm doing in my off time is recovering, ready to go back again and do it all again? Is it, yes, it's giving me money. Yes, I need a job, but is it also filling me? Is it giving me stuff, or is it just constantly taking from me? Maybe that job needs to go in the compost bin. That might take a little while to come through. You know, you may have to consider, do I need to get new skills? What would I love to do? Allow yourself to dream, allow yourself to journal, allow yourself to write down some of the stuff. You don't have to share it with anyone. Some of the craziest stuff that is now starting to come into my life, I didn't share with anybody but George for the longest time, because they seemed so far away and so out there and so crazy. But step by step, when I realised that's the direction I wanted to go in, people came upon me, books came upon me, conversations with people who were able to give me the next thing that I needed to help me to nurture and grow that seed came to me. It was amazing what happened when I took ownership and looked at my life and realised there were parts of it I didn't like, and there were reasons that I didn't like them was because I'd put myself somewhere I didn't necessarily, that doesn't suit me now. Let's put it that way. It may have suited me then, it may have worked then, it may have whatever. But after the last 5 years have come through, maybe we change as people, right? What we go through changes us. And sometimes that really, really needs to set you on a new path, and we can resist. And at the end of the day, if we don't resist and we're honest and we start to, like I said, talk to George, talk to God, talk to your higher self, whatever it is that you call, whatever it is that you talk to, or find a trusted friend and talk to them, somebody that you can talk anything to and they aren't going to, think that you're crazy, and they're going to encourage you. They aren't going to discourage you. So I hope that all this has made sense. The next 5 years can make or break you. They can. That's just the bottom line, right? So many people are in fight or flight still from the last 5 years. So many people are still so wounded and hurt. So many people are still trying to resume the plans they had in 2019 before everything fell apart. They're still trying to implement those plans now, and that's why they're struggling, because the world has changed. You have changed. Everything has changed. You may still be able to do those, but it may require a total revamp of your plan. It may require a pivot. It may require going back somewhere and regaining some skills. It could require anything, but don't be scared, because everything out there is for you in some way, shape or form. Once you can work out, what is this trying to show me? What is this trying to give me? What tool am I learning here? I wonder what I'm going to need that for moving forward, and get curious about your life and go forward with curiosity and almost a blank slate feel of like, oh my gosh, there's so much out there. I wonder what is next. That's when your life changes. You'll feel joy, and you'll actually start to attract in the things that you need, because you're not in that fear mode. You're not resisting, and you can actually see all the things that are around you every day, at every minute, that are opportunities for you to grow and become who you came here to be. Hope this was helpful. If you've got through to the end, thank you. If you think this might help somebody who's struggling right now, I'd love it if you'd share it with them. My motto here at Smarting Coaching is, if I can just help one person today, and maybe that person is you, or maybe that person is somebody that you know, I would love it if you could, like the video maybe. And if you feel like you like content like this, please feel free to subscribe, and I would love to see you again in the next video. Take care, and remember, you're the one who's driving your car. Get in that driver's seat and drive, baby. Love you.